My lovely entitled grandmother. TLDR. My grandmother is insane, basically asked for joint custody of me, and I hate the name baby cakes. This has been going on for all 18 years that I've been alive, but was happening before I even existed as well. Some of the stuff in here feels like stuff Reddit would absolutely love, so I thought I'd finally share it somewhere. Here's a list of some of the things my entitled grandmother, father's mother, has done since I was born. Basically asked for joint custody of me. I'm not kidding. When I was an infant/toddler, she seriously asked my parents if I could spend 2 to 3 days at her house weekly, and then every other weekend spend the entire weekend sleeping over at her house as well. Also, she thought my mom breastfeeding me was hogging me. Didn't like the clothes my mother bought for me, so she would buy clothes herself, cut tags off and wash them, and hide them in my closet in my house. She would also do this if she didn't like stuff my parents owned. She'd go out and buy stuff and just stick it in our kitchen drawers. When my mom started making an effort to get us out of the house more so she couldn't randomly stop by to visit so often, she started spying on the calendar we had in our house and then would instead randomly stop by at events we'd be out at. When I was a bit older but still needed babysitting for the summer, she'd come over still in pajamas claiming she hadn't had time to get ready. So then I'd have to go spend the day at her house instead so she could get dressed. Luckily, this stopped when poor innocent me went, "Actually, Grandma, I'm allowed to stay home alone now, so you just go get dressed and I'll wait here." I've been the artist of the family since I was a kid. She'd constantly ask me to draw her stuff, but then if she didn't like what I drew, she'd try to, jokingly, steal another drawing that I'd have made for myself instead. This never went well, lol. When I was like 13 and she was over, she proceeded to say, "Baby cakes, come sit on my lap," where she was on the couch. Again, I was 13 and was way beyond the age of sitting on people's laps. She thinks my mother brainwashed me into hating her, but what actually happened was kid me started noticing how weird she acted compared to my other grandma, and when I asked my mother about it, my mother basically said, "Yeah, she's crazy," and I had no trouble believing her loudly crying face. Ongoing issues now. I can't tell her about anything I'm remotely interested in because she'll latch onto it and try to use it as some way to get me to spend more time with her. Most of you would probably think, why not just spend time with her? But after everything else on this list, I honestly just don't like being around her a lot. One of the reasons she got a phone was for the purpose of texting me in particular, and to this day is still pouty that it didn't work in getting me to talk to her more. Also, when I didn't reply to her weird texts, she'd call up my father and whine to him about how I never talked to her, and then he'd get mad at me over it. This also never went well. She is the reason why I hate all of the pet names baby, baby cakes, babes, my sweet, sweetie, etc. because to this day, me now being 18, she is the only person in my whole family who calls me these names, and it feels like I'm treated like a child. Her newest scheme is that she thinks if she can get me alone with her, my mother won't be able to brainwash me into hating her, and has yet to realize somehow that it has nothing to do with my mother at all, and everything to do with how I myself don't actually want to be alone with her. There are more instances, but the list is legit so long. If anyone would want to hear more, I will happily share though. Now to part 2. TLDR. More crazy grandma stories and I cried in a closet. Also, I don't like hippie paintings. No offense to hippies. It's just not my style. So when I was a toddler, my parents would let me pick out my outfit for the day, since I'm a toddler, so why wouldn't they? And whenever this lady came over, she'd actually force me to change into an outfit she liked better even if I told her I didn't want to. Again, Grandma is arguing with a 2-year-old here about clothes. Like, WTF? The worst of the stories. This lady also loved brushing my hair as a toddler apparently. When I was a kid, I had really curly hair. And for those who may not know, you should never brush out curly hair. This lady would brush my hair so much it'd hurt, and I'd ask her to stop. My mom started taking our brush to work with her, so this lady couldn't get it. So then she bought her own to bring instead. Apparently one day my mom came home to my grandma looking annoyed, and my grandma told her something along the lines of me having been bratty or something. My mom goes upstairs to find, again, 2-year-old me crying in my closet because I'd asked Grandma to stop brushing my hair, and she wouldn't, so I ran and hid from her in my f***ing closet. This lady made a toddler cry just because she wanted to brush my damn hair. Yes, my mother had a lengthy talk with her after this one. Now to other things that have happened since the first post. I had my family grad party on Sunday, and her and my grandpa got to the restaurant before the rest of us. There was an uneven number of us, so the table had the extra seat right at the end, so head of the table. She decided she would position herself and my grandpa right next to the head of the table chair, with the assumption that I would sit there and therefore sit right next to her all night. Like, yes, lady, I definitely would rather sit next to you than, I don't know, my own damn parents? Or perhaps my younger cousins that I sit with at every family outing? When I informed her that LOL no way was I sitting at the head of the table and would again much rather sit with my parents and cousins, she actually seemed offended. For this next story, I first need to explain how she does gift giving. So usually for holidays/birthdays, you get someone something they either directly asked for or something you just know would cater to their interests. No, this lady gets you something that she wants to give you, which 90% of the time means something that caters to her interest/style and is something you yourself would probably never want in your life. In fact, when it was explained to her by my mother and rest of the family that we usually get gifts the person actually asked for, she was offended and thought that made us entitled and bossy. Anyways, now the story. For my graduation, she got me this painting made by her friend with some inspirational quote on it, as well as a whale and a very stylized-looking person. I hate to seem ungrateful, but I don't own anything ocean-themed whatsoever, and the colors of this painting are incredibly bold and kinda jarring and don't go with anything I own in the slightest. And while there, she's literally saying, yeah, like it matches your wall color so you could just get a nail and go put it up like right now. And the whole time I'm trying to awkwardly smile and deflect her suggestions. Also, I should clarify, the only things on my bedroom walls are my own drawings and a poster of a fat tiger. I don't even have the wall space for this thing. However, it looks exactly like the artwork in her own house. Other examples of the gift giving. My mother hates the color orange. This grandma loves the color orange. This grandma once bought my mother a bright orange, bead-covered hippie-looking jacket and actually got offended when my mother kindly refused it. Since this grandma doesn't really know many of interests of mine, because I can't tell her, she'll buy me random shit. The problem is if you spent legit 5 minutes in my room, it would be really obvious what I like by my 4 different crystal collections and rabbit stuffed animals. Now for some context, when I buy crystals, they're often smaller or only slightly larger than a toonie, so like 1 by 1 inches I guess, and often a shade of blue or purple. This lady bought me a massive pink crystal the size of my entire palm. I had to actually move shit to make space for it on my shelf because I never buy crystals that big. Also for Christmas one year she bought me, and both my parents, these creepy nutcrackers. Again, we don't own anything nutcracker related. And again got offended when we didn't add them to our yearly Christmas decor. Also, since a lot of people were asking in the last post, I thought I'd clarify here for those who may not have seen my replies where my dad has been for all of this. Basically, he was her only kid, and since she's a piece of work, most of her side of the family doesn't actually like her. He's nice to her still because he feels obligated as her only kid and again because she kinda doesn't have many other people. That side of my family is legit her, my grandpa, and her 100-year-old mother who is obviously not the best of company. Obviously he wishes I had a better relationship with her so he doesn't participate in my mom and I gossiping about her. We don't do it in front of him but still. But also has kinda given up on trying to get me to like her and has also stopped going along with her demands of making me call her/talk to her more. I think he actually told her at one point something along the lines of this being her own bed that she made so she shouldn't complain about laying in it. Hopefully I won't make a part 3 LOL. Now to the next story, story 2. The audacity of my sister-in-law, plus in-laws in general. Buckle up. This is going to be a long reflection dump. My so and I have been in no contact with his family for a few years now, but I still get flashbacks of their antics, ESPSILs. So FYI, these stories were from several years ago. 1. She wanted my so to pay for her abortion because he apparently caused her pregnancy. Yes, you read that right. My so graduated with a master's degree and got offered a top-notch job, so he invited everyone to his graduation and to celebrate after. His sister was 23 years old at the time, but to this day she remains a high school dropout who refuses to go to college or make anything of herself except do drugs/parties/gym. She was incredibly distraught by the news of her brother's success and hated him getting any kind of attention, that she went missing for 2 weeks and returned pregnant, father unknown, as she partied a lot. Her plus the parents wanted my so to pay for the abortion because he did this to her. He refused, instead showing care as any brother should and referring her to an abortion clinic. Enraged by his refusal to pay, SIL had a tantrum and lashed out at their dog before driving off and damaging the car, then wanting him to pay for that too. They twisted the story to extended family/friends, no mention of SIL's pregnancy and antics, just a generic smear campaign and pity party about my so refusing to help his sister, and my so received many angry confrontations saying he should be ashamed of himself for being so abusive towards his poor innocent sister. His sister and a few others refused to attend his graduation. Soon after, my so finally had the money to move out of home and go and see. 2. She expected everyone to fix and pay for her problems, then threatened to do things if she didn't get her way. The previous story wasn't a one-off. She was always in legal/financial/personal trouble. Whatever bizarre mess she got herself into, she'd have tantrums and threaten to run away if people didn't pay up and help. Sometimes her demands were degrading towards my so, like when she vomits on the floor or destroys the toilet. She always managed to get gastro once a month, and if my so didn't clean it up, he'd get scolded by everyone for not caring about the family. I was also guilted by MIL to be a helpful big sister to SIL, but no matter how much I helped, it was never enough and SIL would play victim, no one helps me or loves me, etc. 3. She's an outright bully. E.g. at one family lunch, SIL fussed about the fact my so gave me his sweet potato. He's not a fan. She started saying, "See, Mom? He's such a child. I'm a good girl and eat my sweet potato. Eat it. Now. You are wasting it." He reassuringly explained that I will eat it for him but wouldn't stop complaining and insulting him, so he said, "SIL's name, relax," and she retaliated with, "Don't you fking tell me to fking relax?" and squashed the sweet potato in her bare hands and threw it across the dining room. She left, then marched back in demanding an apology and said, "If I do something bad after this, it's your fault," before running off and wailing. We left the event because MIL started scolding and berating my so, and clearly we were no longer welcome. This enraged MIL plus SIL, as they both texted us demanding further apologies for upsetting SIL and leaving. Again, this wasn't a one-off thing. My so would call his sister out on her abuse/insults, then she'd run away crying and MIL would step in and scold him, insisting his sister was trying to fix their sibling relationship, complete BS, and that he's the one that's ungrateful and uncooperative. 4. She would steal stuff and steal credit. Despite the fact she had an endless supply of nice stuff, my so would still discover MY things, perfume, lipstick, etc., in her bags and closet. She'd even help herself to things like his used razors because she couldn't be bothered to buy her own, and he'd have to throw them out. When she was called out, she'd scream, kick, cry, etc. It was so bad he resorted to hiding and locking things away. SIL's also very ill-equipped for adulthood. She refuses to learn basic adult responsibilities, can't keep a basic job, etc. She doesn't even wash her hands or close the door when using the toilet. But to save face, she'd try take credit when my so did chores. The parents would give over-the-top praise to her, plus money if she asked. But if my so spoke up saying, "Actually I did the work," they'd accuse him of stealing his sister's credit. When hosting social events, my so would set everything up, cook, clean, etc., and I'd overhear MIL whisper to SIL, "Tell everyone you did it and not your brother, okay?" Just before and see, my so stopped doing anything for his family, and they'd get mad because things went to shambles without him. Side note, the whole fam was entitled to my so. SIL, FIL, and MIL have all had their fair share of inflicting damage on the family, and my so fixed things by stepping up to compensate for their flaws, e.g. in my SO's childhood. MIL had many outbursts and even abandoned the family due to FIL's apparent laziness/incompetence, only deciding to return once her teenage son became a provider, did all the domestic labor, studied hard, etc. Obviously, this meant they all reacted really poorly once he moved out, got therapy for his trauma, and went in C. Next story, Story 3. Coworker commits a felony because she thinks I'm lazy. For context, I work in a warehouse for one of the major U.S. package delivery companies. Think Amazon, UPS, FedEx, USPS. I load a straight truck, but I also handle the rediverts, which are packages that mistakenly end up in the wrong parts of the building and need to be carted to the right area, 3 separate areas, which can keep me pretty busy. Monday morning for us was a nightmare. We were incredibly short-staffed and busy as hell, so on top of handling my very packed truck and all the rediverts, I was also assisting another work area that was way behind, assisting my manager in loading a semi-trailer. He has heart problems and shouldn't be doing so much hard work like that by himself, and checking on 3 other co-workers who had multiple straight trucks to load by themselves. My manager asked me to do all of this, since everyone else was also extremely busy. This meant my original truck would often get neglected and the packages would pile up until I could get back to loading them. Enter entitled coworker, or EC for short. EC has just come back from about a month off. She's responsible for sorting packages off one of the main conveyor belts and sending them to my work area, as well as a couple others. So when I'm not there to load my truck, it can get pretty backed up, and that stresses EC right out. Another thing about EC is she's been kicked out of every other part of the building for being too slow and constantly complaining. If you ask her to lift a heavy box, she cries that she can't do it. If it's getting busy and packages are piling up, she cries that she can't handle all the work. If another coworker snaps at her, it's a stressful job so tempers can run high, and asks that she do her job, she cries that the other person started the fight. Her and I have had problems before. She once dropped an open bottle of Sprite all over a box containing very fragile medical supplies. Obviously, the box had to be damaged out and claim paid on it, but she insisted it was my fault it happened because my work area was getting backed up and she started throwing boxes where she shouldn't, but I just try to ignore her. I don't come to work to start drama or fights. I come to work, sweat my ass off, and get paid. So Monday, as I'm running ragged doing the jobs of 5 people, and my work area was getting backed up frequently, I walk over to hand some rediverts over to a different coworker who was also backed up and running ragged, and I look up just in time to see EC, phone up, taking pictures of me, my work area, and my coworker's work area, so she could send them to our manager to complain about how lazy we were being. Now, for those of you that don't know, taking pictures of personal packages and addresses is highly illegal. It counts as a form of mail fraud, which is a felony offense. If the United States Postal Inspection Services found out, our warehouse could have been raided and she could have been thrown in jail. So not only is it rude, it's extremely and explicitly forbidden in the workplace. So as soon as I saw her do that, I started fuming. Thankfully, I happened to spot the sort manager, my manager's manager, across the way, so I stopped him and told him what happened, and he had a stern talking to with her. I didn't hear most of the conversation, but I did hear her crying, "Oh, but, coworker," trying to pin all of the blame on him for being overloaded with packages. I don't think she got in serious trouble this time, but I doubt she learned her lesson, and if she does it again, I won't hesitate to go higher up. I hope this witch gets fired.